All right, so welcome to a special edition meeting of Kubernetes SIG Service Catalog. It is Tuesday, May 9th, 1400 hours and 7 minutes on the eastern coast of the United States of America. Welcome, everybody. Today we're going to go through the Open Service Broker API spec, and we're going to create some issues if we feel there are any gaps that we have to close. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And let's see. So here, I'll just load up the spec. Someone mute. Okay. I do not think there is anything that affects any business logic in API overview or notational conventions. Likewise with the change policy, I do think that the API version header we have hard-coded right now, and I wonder what people think about, is that something that we should, like, is it okay to have it be hard-coded for now, or do we have any kind of need to control that on a per broker basis?
I think it would be useful to continue hard-coding it as the default. We can add a field on in the broker resource to allow someone to set it on a per broker basis. However, doing that requires that we version the actual client code, the Go code. So we would need to add that at the same time as we add support for the broker field.
Yeah. I could see us doing that in the future. I wonder if, so as we go through this thing, do folks think that we should create issues for everything that we can think of, or should the decision plane be like, does it immediately affect us in beta, or is it a must-have for GA?
I think we should create issues under a new label. I'll create that right now. I'm just going to call it broker, and we can go back and triage later.
Yeah.
So are we talking about issues for the spec or issues for us?
This is issues for us to close any gaps in the spec.
Gotcha. Okay.
So what is the gap here?
I think the gap is that currently we will send a hard-coded API version header, and it might be useful if we have like a really old broker to integrate with to be able to send something different. But I might be making this use case up too.
Yeah, my experience, I'm not sure we want to support some different headers at different times. If there's a problem here with versioning, I'd rather solve it at the spec level.
Yes.
Now, having said that, for debug or for backwards compatibility issues, I'm okay with us having a flag someplace, like an environment variable or something, that allows us to override it for globally, not on a per broker basis, because we have had cases for other products where for some reason someone can't step up and I need to send this old version of the header and there is no way to change it without going in and recompiling the product, and that wasn't good.
Okay. Sounds like we should have an issue for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
but I think I just want to make sure I understand it, because it's, just that there is the sending of the version header and then there's actually supporting particular version. And those two things are very separate.
Yeah.
And I just want to be very clear on what it is that we are trying to do here, because if it is just being able to go and say, hey, I want to be able to support this string, that's fine. I think trying to go ahead and say that our broker is going to support in different versions at any given time is a complete disaster.
Yeah, so if we allow configurability of that string, we have to support all the versions that can be passed in, or fail. If someone goes like 2.08, we can fail.
And that to me sounds like a disaster.
So I would be totally fine if we said we're going to hard code it to 2.11 for now, and we're only going to support 2.11 brokers for now. And if someone comes to us with a really good case to do something different, we can talk about it then.
So note, though, that if we do decide to support 2.12, we have to keep 2.11 support. Once we hit, well, we can say once we hit 1.0, then we have to keep it.
Yeah, so we do, I tell you what, I'm going to make an issue now for figure out how to handle supporting 2.12, since that's probably going to happen imminently and we're going to want to support it. I
So
think,
keep in mind, this header is just on the platform to the broker.
yeah.
So I'm not sure necessarily, quote, we need to necessarily support anything as much as brokers do. And if we follow the specification, I'm sorry, if everybody follows the specification, as long as we're in 2 dot something, it should be completely backwards compatible. So there may not be a huge issue here. I do think it's important, though, that we allow people through a configuration option to be able to set it to a particular version number. If, for example, when we step up to 2.12, for some reason things start breaking for people, I'd like to be able to have them through a configuration option be able to set it back to 2.11.
Yeah, so I think that's a valid use case. So if someone wants to go ahead and create that issue, we can debate it later. I think for now, let's just try to do chainsaw level. Is there a thing to talk about later on? And if there is, we can make issues and sort them out later, provided people are okay with that.
I think that's fine. We can just have a comment thread on this issue.
Okay. So I think that the only other thing that I see here is that the broker might reject a request with the 412 code, and I don't know that we would necessarily surface that in a way that was understandable to people. Do we need an issue for that? Like handling the 412 error code and saying, broker says it can't support this operation because it doesn't support the version of the API you're sending.
I think it's a tricky issue, but I guess my worry is that if there's something that has been introduced in something like 2.12, as Doug said, it should work. It should be backwards compatible.
Yeah.
What I'm worried about is if we say have to go back to 2.11 and there's something that has been added, then we have to keep track of it and say like, okay, well, it's a 2.11, so do not send these fields or something like that, or send these fields differently. That's my worry, and I think that's the part that I think is going to be a disaster. But maybe I'm just complicating it too much. But it seems like it's a very tricky moving forward to support, and then have the condition like, hey, I don't support this. It seems like at that point you should have a protocol for negotiating a versioning and things like that. When a broker gets registered, I think this is something that we have talked about in the past.
Yes.
Yes. So, but even then, that might be just the tip of the iceberg, because there's the negotiation and then there's actually supporting all kinds of different older versions in there. But
right, and what I'm asking about now is, do folks think we specifically need an issue to ensure that we handle the 412 error code that the broker might return here?
What do we do right now if they send back a 402? I'm sorry, 412, sorry.
I don't think that we have a test for it. So maybe that, it sounds like we should, that we should add a test for it and ensure that it's handled correctly.
Yeah, I would agree. Just make sure we just basically generate an error, log it, whatever, and then move on.
Yeah. All right. So make a new issue. All right. So I think that's it for API version header. How about auth?
There's TLS. If we want to, do we have a flag for that now?
I don't think that we do. I was actually thinking about that over the weekend. So there's probably a few different ones that would shake out. Like registering, if you need a CA to be able to recognize the broker's serving certificate, and what cert you want to use when you send requests, right?
Yeah, I think there's an issue on this. I mean, this is part of the reason why I had to add that little hacky flag there. And then I think, Aaron, you and I talked about a couple of different ways of solving this. And I think in your issue, you said here's a couple of different, yeah, the top one. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're good there then. Like,
I think with the combination of those two, we'll be okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's really the top one, 606, that has the thread that's specific to broker TLS.
Yeah, the 389 is about our
that one's completely different
for API server.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Here be
I'm
dragons.
actually going to go in and rename this one now, since we're talking about it, just to be a little bit more specific. Okay.
Does that include API server to the controller manager?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Serving SSL from the API server, and then 606 is for TLS on communication with broker.
Yeah, so 389 is SSL TLS from controller manager to API server, and also in the future from the aggregator to our API server.
Yep. Yeah. Okay.
So sorry guys, I gotta go. Good luck.
All right. Okay. So with that morale boosting utterance from Aaron, do we think that there are any other auth related issues as relates to what's on the screen right now that we need to have issues for?
Are there any other authentication methods expected to be supported by brokers?
That is a really good question. In fact, we are talking not right at this moment, but ongoing in Open Service Broker Working Group about adding token-based auth, and then also adding user impersonation, which isn't an auth thing strictly in this sense, but touches that area. So yeah, there is a desire from many folks that are on the API working group to add other auth methods, which is not especially surprising considering that the current options are nothing or basic auth. I'm getting a thumbs down on basic auth in the room.
Or basic auth. It always gets picked on.
So I'm not hearing another thing. Now I think we can move on to catalog management. Okay, so we have some issues already open for this, like handling updates of services and plans. We've got the issue for should we use the Open Service Broker GUIDs of services as the names and use the GUIDs of plans as the names when we make references to these things from other objects. I think I've also created one for be able to. I've done some work for ensuring that you don't continually relist the broker's catalog, but there's one that I don't think that I've created an issue for. I'll check in a moment, which is there a use case for having a configurable relist period on a per broker basis that's maybe a flag in the API? that would be like relist period, so that you could say for a specific broker, I want you to refetch this one every day, or I want you to only fetch this one every 3 weeks or something like that. Is that a valid use case? Does anybody care about that right now?
I think it is, and I think I think you and I actually had a conversation on one of the issues, which was there should, or maybe it was in the pull request, which is you should also be able to, I think, to have the do not relist this.
Yes, I already made an issue that I think encompasses all that stuff.
Yes.
Just let you know from the Bluemix side, we don't do automatic relist. It is sort of a manual, explicitly go get this guy thing. But I do agree in general, it is good to have the ability to do an automatic relist on a periodic basis.
Okay. All right. So Aaron had wanted to tag or label these things. I guess since we're talking about it, I'll put the broker label on this one too. Do
we have an issue already open for doing an update and all the issues around that? I thought we did, but I wasn't 100% sure.
Update of an instance?
No, I'm sorry. A refresh of the catalog.
I think you made one. You just
made
one. Broker update semantics.
Yeah, that was more specific about a particular issue there. I wasn't sure if there was a bigger one that just said add support for it in general. Mine was about what to do about particular aspects of it. If not, I'll double check and make sure we have something.
I don't think that we have a umbrella issue for it.
Okay, I'll open one up then.
Okay, let's see.
So since just a quick question about some of these issues, would it be useful to tag the spec compliance there or something like that as well instead of just the broker?
Yeah, so I was going to suggest that we rename the broker label to be broker API conformance or compliance or something like that, because in speaking with people, especially those that aren't like in the SIG, it's all broker, 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 broker.
Right.
Let's see. Oops. So did anybody like one of those names especially? Conformance, compliance, does anybody care?
I think the fact that it should have like a spec or compliance or something like that, that it actually means that it affects correctness.
Yeah. Too much?
Or just right.
I'm hearing just right.
Fine.
Okay, there we go. All right, let's see. So we were on catalog management. The only thing that that I can think of here is if we need to do actually, okay, I can think of a couple things here, and I'm not sure if we can create issues for them later in this thing, but we don't support plan update yet. We don't support parameter update yet. So we need issues for those. Has anybody on this call had experience using the dashboard SSO feature? Because I'm wondering if there's anything further that we need to do for dashboard stuff. For one thing, if you look at the dashboard client, it does say that it gives you a secret, and anything that's a secret should not live in our resource. It should live in a secret. So maybe there's an issue for put the actual dashboard secret information into a Kubernetes secret somewhere. So if anybody knows about OAuth, do we consider the OAuth, like the thing that says the ID of the OAuth client, is that a secret itself, or is that something that you can just treat like config?
I believe it's config.
Okay.
I want to double check that.
Is there a reason why we wouldn't just tag all of those and put them in the secret as an object, and that contains all three, or like?
I was gonna suggest the same thing,
Okay.
but yeah.
Tell you what I'm going to do. I will make
Put an
an
issue.
And then you only have one ref to worry about.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I know in the past it's been said that we don't secrets, you don't want to put big things in there where big is hand wavy, but I don't see any of those being a problem, so might as well stash them.
Oops. Okay. Oops. All right. Now, I think actually we have something else that is a gap, which is yeah. So plans can override the bindable bit on a service, and our plan object doesn't have bindable. So we need to incorporate that.
Are there other parameters inside of plan or any other object that we are excluding that you know of?
I think that is it, unless you count the schema support, which is inherently like attached to each plan. And I started a pull request for that one. I haven't made it yet. I hope that I'll be able to land that today.
Okay.
And we already have an issue for that one.
Can you go back just a little bit? Hold on, where they? Oh, just it's the requires field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right there.
Ah, yes. All right. I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I can think of a couple things about this.
CFism.
Well, it's a CFism, and we don't have anything right now that's that will say, oh, you can't provision this one because it requires syslog drain, and we don't know how to do that yet.
Exactly. Yeah. So, Doug, do you know if there is an issue open on tracking the removal of this or changing of this in the OSP side of things?
Not that I recall, but can you guys elaborate what the issue is here? This is just a list of sort of features that the service is going to want to do, right?
So there are three of these required permissions or that you can have, and they're basically hooks into Cloud Foundry's implementation that if you have requires route forwarding, you can do things like send this bind resource in the bind request and say, I want you to set up this route for me, which we're not going to do anything for that yet. So I think there's like probably two parts of this, which is for now, we probably need to have something that like prevents you from instantiating a service that requires one of these things, since we don't implement any of them. And then there's another facet of determine if we're going to try to implement any of them.
Yeah, be a little bit careful though, right? Because I agree that on some of these, it may require hardcore Kubernetes features, right? Or tie-ins, I should say, like for example, volume mount as an example. But something like route forwarding may be something you could implement outside of Kubernetes, right? And so it's possible for an environment, a particular platform to support that without necessarily getting changes from the service catalog team or Kubernetes to make it happen. So we got to be a little bit careful about saying we're going to remove some of these things. I need to think a little bit more about it, but I just want to be a little bit cautious.
I'm not suggesting that we remove it. I'm just suggesting that in the interim, until we know what the story is going to be, that we like either have a warning event that gets generated that says this might not work correctly because it requires a permission that Kubernetes catalog doesn't support yet, or something that's like you can't bind to this one because it's not going to work right.
That's fine.
Okay. So I'll make one for okay. Does someone else want to make one for figure out what we're going to do about them? I see VLA volunteering.
Yeah, I can dig into it, understand it, because it seems, yeah. Yep.
Okay. What, if anything, is there left about this? So are costs part of metadata?
I thought that was a sample field, but let me double check. Hold on.
So I think they were under metadata. The only thing that's bubbled up above metadata was free or not.
Yeah, but metadata
Yeah.
is a convention kind of thing, right? It's not hard coded to the spec.
Yeah, it does seem like something that, I guess if it goes into metadata, UIs can display it, right? And I think the way we've been treating metadata so far is that we're going to treat it like a blob, and UIs can do what they want with it. I don't see any particular need to do anything different for this, but I wonder how other people think.
I think until we get to the point where we actually have modifications to the Kubernetes UI that are service catalog specific, I think treating it as a blob and letting people look at it as they want is probably the best option for right now.
Okay. Anybody else have an opinion? All right. So that is everything as far as we know for catalog related things. Are there any conformance issues that, like in that area, that we haven't talked through that people can think of now?
I think we haven't covered versioning of the catalog plans and stuff, but it could be just part of the naming of the plans, I guess. I don't know if we need to explicitly mention it.
Yeah, so right now, I think the versioning story is that things can just change underneath your feet. right now, and there's nothing in the spec that's a first-class way to indicate this is version 1.1 of Plan XYZ, which is not a great story, but maybe a fact of life for us until we can make a little bit of progress on the open source, the open service broker API versioning scheme.
Well, I did open up an issue over the weekend that talks about how to handle not necessarily versioning, or as much as things appearing and disappearing in the
Right.
catalog. Because
Yeah.
there is no notion of versioning catalog resources itself. All you can do is delete something and add something.
Yeah, so we're covered on that angle. By the way, I just put it together. I'm not sure how you pronounce your name, but I know your GitHub handle is Nilebox. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
All right, well, welcome, Nilebox. How do you pronounce your name?
My name is Nail.
Okay. It sounds like Nail.
Yeah.
All right, welcome. Glad to have you. And thank you for the pull request too, which I have not yet had a chance to review, but glad to have you here. Welcome, welcome. Okay, I think we're covered then for catalog management. So next up is synchronous and asynchronous operations. Vile has done a lot of work in this area, and I think that you've been working on closing some of the gaps that we knew about with stuff, basically a lock preventing updates or deletions to instances that have an async op in progress.
Yeah.
Are there any other facets of that we need to talk through? I did a little bit of work in this area for preventing bindings from happening until after an instance becomes ready, that I think handles the creation case. I actually now am wondering, do we need something similar to prevent a binding from being deleted while a async operation is in progress?
Yes. Yeah, we need that, and that's on my list of things to do. I just need to know, that one is the easy part. For the most part, the trickier bit is where to check that how early in the pipeline can we detect that an async operation is ongoing when you are trying to modify a service instance or delete it. And that's the issue that led me to, does it need to be, where does it go? The binding part is trivial, straightforward.
And I just to talk through it really quickly, I think we could still accept the binding delete and just make the controller avoid taking action on it.
It's, well, if, see.
Can you elaborate binding delete during what?
So say that an async provision is requested,
Right.
or it's in progress, or maybe it's an async update. Someone comes and deletes a binding because they want to unbind from that instance that's being updated. And I have the opinion that, so the way this works, forget about the async thing, is that when you delete a binding, we set the deletion timestamp, but it gets turned into an update, and then the controller sees it and says, oh, okay, well, I'm going to handle deprovision, or I'm sorry, unbind now because the deletion timestamp is set. We don't just delete the instance because we have to have a way to reconcile on it. So I think we could accept the delete just like we do and not have the controller do any work until the instance was ready, which actually might be the way it's coded now. I would need to look.
Yeah, the problem is if you go down, if you do a Control F for blocking in this, or whatever the search key is in the page in your fancy.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so see, so the spec, this is the tricky part about the spec, which basically the last sentence, which is if you attempt to perform these operations, it must receive a 400 response with the error message. So it's going to be very, very, I think the semantics that we can provide here require something like either an admission controller or whatever. I still need to understand the REST API machinery, but this getting the user to go and get a 400, I don't think they're going to get a 400. They might get a error field. And do they show up as a 400?
So I think that there are two different interpretations that might be made of this stanza. So when I say, or when I look at the, I'll just read it aloud and then we can pick it apart. It says, the marketplace must ensure that service brokers do not receive requests for an instance while an asynchronous operation is in progress.
Yep.
And that part makes total sense. I don't think
Yes.
there's any ambiguity there.
Nope.
The next sentence is, for example, if a broker is in the process of provisioning an instance asynchronously, the marketplace cannot allow any update, bind, unbind, or deprovision requests to be made through the platform. This highlighted thing, the to be made through the platform, is a little ambiguous. And I'm not sure if that means that the marketplace, if that's reiterating that the marketplace shouldn't send any requests.
No, I think, Paul, I think this is a problem in the spec. I think that last sentence is meant for a Cloud Foundry user and therefore is out of scope of the spec.
Yeah, I think it's just the probably Cloud Foundry Marketplace has a RPC style, so it whether accepts the request or rejects it. While in Kubernetes you just update the intent, right? You don't synchronously wait for request to be processed, and
Yeah.
I think this requirement works against Kubernetes principle of reconciliation loop.
So if this refers to the fact that the platform shouldn't send it, I think it's fine. The next sentence adds to the confusion a little bit because it says, a user who attempts to perform one of these actions while an operation is already in progress must receive an HTTP 400 response with the error message, blah. And
We should get that sentence removed and potentially replace it with something that says, how a broker is supposed to react if he's in the middle of an async operation and he gets a request.
yeah.
That's what we should replace it with.
Doug, do you have an interest in cutting a quick poll for that one?
You talk about for the spec itself, I assume?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay. So assuming this gets clarified, I think there are still there's still 4 cases that we have to handle, 2 of which VLA is already working on, which are actually preventing the resource from being updated or deleted for instances, which I think we have to do. I see VLA's nodding. And then the other 2 are prevent creation or deletion of bindings.
The binding is already there.
Yeah, the bind won't happen until the instance is ready.
No, but I also added code in my last PR to prevent the binding while an operation is in process. I just need to do the same thing for the unbind.
Right. Yeah, I think we're talking about the same thing. And I think that we have to still accept those things from the API at the API server level, but the controller can't act on them. Right? Because we have to support the case for creation where you might create the instance and the binding in the same YAML file. We have to support that.
Yes.
So the only question is, should we accept the delete or should we actually block the delete? And I think the right thing to do is accept the delete, don't act on it until the instance is ready.
Yeah, that's fine. And I think that I think that's perfectly fine. It was just that if we want to go ahead and get those behaviors, and I think it's the correct behavior the way Kubernetes works.
Yeah.
But in order to be spec compliant, that would be very tricky. And I think that trying to go ahead and strike that from the spec is a good way to get there.
Okay, I think that should be strikeable. So I think we can proceed as planned and we don't need to do anything different, provided that we can get the sentence struck out of the spec.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think
Go ahead. Sorry. Go finish your sentence. Then I'll ask my question.
No, I was going to say I think I would have to look at the code, but I think what I did is I made a condition. So if you try to create a binding and an operation is asynchronously ongoing, I think I made a condition that says there's an async in progress, and then so the user at least can understand what the heck is going on, and then eventually the reconciler should say, okay, well now there is no longer a thing ongoing, so let me do you up.
Yeah, I think we update the ready condition with a reason, and there's a new bit in the status object itself that says async op in progress, right?
The instance has one, and then, but I think so there's the instance has the status bit, and then if you come in and try to create a binding, I think I had to look at it, but I think what I did is, well, regardless of what I did, I think the way it should work is we should set the condition is not ready, reason, asynchronous operation ongoing on the service instance. And then once the async operation completes, then we proceed with the binding just as usual.
I agree.
And then by duality, we should have the same semantic on the deletion of the binding. So we would come in, we would look at it and say the delete timestamp has been set on the binding. And we would say, okay, but we are not going to take any action on it. And whatever the ready conditions are for that, we would do the same thing, async operation in progress. And we basically just wait until that goes away. And then we proceed with the deletion.
Yeah, so my only question is, Ville, do you think that we need any more issues to capture this? I mean, you obviously have a very strong and immediate grasp of everything that has to get done. So
no, I think for the instances, I just need to know where to put the right place. So I got it. Thank you.
Cool. Okay.
And Doug, you were going to say something. Sorry.
It's okay. We're running out of time. I'll ask you offline.
Uh-oh.
So the next piece of this is last operation, and I think that, like, aside from the stuff we just talked to, in a vacuum, like nothing else is happening, the async mechanics work correctly. Now, at Red Hat, we've verified they work with a couple different brokers that we have. And I don't think there are any gaps for this aside from the ones we've already talked through. Does anybody else have anything or know of anything that we need to do?
No, there's the issue for moving everything into a single queue that is on my plate, and I've started to look at that, and but that is it's a wart, but it's a wart. It needs to be fixed.
Okay, I don't see anything here that I feel is missing. Okay, I'm not hearing disagreement. So there's provisioning. We already know that there are some issues to sort out with what we send for org and space and for context. The only thing that comes to mind is that I have also made an issue for being able to send parameters from secret keys. So like if you have your like secret API key, you don't want to stick that in one of these resources. You want to stick it in a secret, refer to it by its coordinates. So I have an issue for that created. Excuse me. Anything else that comes to mind for folks? I know we also have something to clarify in the spec that even if you are doing async provisioning, that the initial response from the provision request is your one opportunity to set dashboard URL. And there's another one that I believe is in progress to say that the broker must return an identifier for the operation. But I believe that we handle last operation correctly, modulo some pull request to move that field from spec to status, which I think I merged this morning, actually.
Yes, you did.
Any other gaps that we need to close here?
I have raised an issue about the item potency guarantees and the potential orphans. For example, if the provisioning times out, but it's actually like a separate section in the end of this page, so we can just mention it later.
Okay.
But it's relevant to both provisioning and binding, I guess.
Yeah, like if the operation times out, but it actually completed.
Yeah, and do we need to delete it or do we need to retry? And currently it explicitly says that we have to delete and anything which was requested.
Yeah, that we have to keep deleting until we get a positive.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like that's it for provisioning. So update, now, let's see. Whoops. Okay, I have one for supporting plan updates. I don't think there's one for parameter updates.
I'm going to step out just for a sec.
All right. So I will assume that the issues we've already created for updates will encompass async operations. Now, I spent a little time last night looking at the update request body, and it seems to me like previous values is sort of a perhaps a misstep in API design that they have to live with because it's been released, and that we have to live with. I am inclined to say that we should never send these. They're optional, and they make no sense to me why they should have to be sent. That is my own personal opinion. I wonder how other people feel about that.
Well, I would agree, except for plan. Service ID, org ID, and space ID make no sense whatsoever since they can't be changed. But plan ID would be useful because for some reason the broker may not have that information. So yeah, I think it's good to send it.
I don't disagree, but I noticed that none of these fields, and this is the weirdest part to me, that previous plan ID is not required.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that'd be nice.
Okay, I had wondered to myself last night whether it being optional might be an omission.
How is,
Maybe, but I don't think you can make it required without breaking the spec or without breaking backwards compatibility.
Well, I mean, I wonder if it's something that might have been a transcription error somewhere. When the GitHub.
Okay, we can check that. I'll check it while we move on.
Okay.
Sorry, but if the service ID is a new unique identifier, why do we need to pass all the previous values at all? Like I think it should be stored by service broker itself, right? Based on the service ID.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I characterize them as seeming like they were missteps. They're not. I mean, they're not required. So
yeah, it feels to me that some of the things here are just like Cloud Foundry trying to simplify things for service broker, but it makes it harder for marketplace, and that's kind of confusing part here.
Yeah, I think for the longest time there has been, yeah, you're absolutely right, which is they don't want to make any assumptions about the state being kept by the brokers. But I think that's changing with some addition to the spec as well. So this would be also a good time to talk about that as well.
Does anybody think we need an issue around this? Sorry, go ahead, Doug.
I was just going to say, I was looking at version 2.10 of the specification. Previous values, everything was optional there as well. None of them were required.
Okay.
So I don't think it's a typo. So, or transcribing error, as you said.
Yeah. I'll just call out, since we're on this subject, I have a pull request open to clarify the behavior of plan ID when you don't set it and parameters when you don't set them in the update request. Which I need to go and incorporate your feedback, Doug, but I'll just call it out that I have a PR open that touches this part of the spec. Any other gaps here?
I think it's not covered by specification at all that, like, what happens if the service broker needs some things to be updated without the request from the user or from the marketplace? Like, how do we propagate these changes? Is it even supported at all?
Like originating events at the broker to the platform?
Yeah, like disaster recovery, like something like that, like maybe credentials rotations forced by some accident, I don't know. Anything?
I think you need to join the Open Service Broker Working Group call, buddy. Because we're talking through all the things that you're raising.
Okay. And just to answer your question, though, there is nothing in the specification that talks about that today. We do have a conversation going on around how to initiate conversations from the broker back to the platform on behalf of the user, and that may encapsulate some of what you're talking about there. But as of right now, there's nothing in the spec that talks about it.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a little time to keep going. If folks want to drop off, you won't hurt my feelings. We're recording this. I'll make sure it gets posted ASAP while I catch up on my backlog of SIG meetings. Moving on. Ville, I think while you were away, I said that I considered the issues that we have for parameter update and plan update to encompass the async stuff. And
okay.
I think you laid the groundwork pretty well with like the mechanics, so we should be able to easily implement that.
Okay, great. Yeah, I had my daughter got a concussion and she's staying home and she needed something, so I was like, oh, okay, I gotta go check on her.
I would make the same trade-off.
Yes.
Okay, binding. So I did a pull request a couple weeks ago to ensure that you can't bind to a non-bindable service. I just created the issue to add plan bindable bit that I will incorporate into that work, or I'll make a note later that it should be incorporated for whoever does it. I think from a mechanical standpoint, just for that that we should be covered by that one. Here's where we get into these weird permissions. So I don't think we should necessarily talk about log drain, route services, and volume services now. But I'm happy to hear other opinions if people would have a strong, burning desire to talk about log drain or route services, etc. at this moment.
No, I would like to go and make sure that at least we have a issue tracking them and then move on, because I can see this being time sinks.
Yeah. So I think you were going to create the one for figure out what to do with them, right, Vile?
Yep.
Okay. Now here's a gap that I don't know if we need to close now. In fact, I think Doug, one of the issues you created for AppGrid probably covers this one, but there's the bind resource that, if I remember correctly, I don't think we plumb up today on a binding.
Oh, so we just send it as an app GUID at the top level?
Well, I mean, if you look at my screen here, the binding spec doesn't have anything about bind resource. I don't know if we need to plumb that up or what. We might need some clarification, or if somebody can provide some kind of like use case that they've got a broker that they need to send some arbitrary stuff there or what. Maybe we do need an issue to track it.
Where were you in that document? Where were you in the types.go again? I want to check something.
I was in the internal types.go line 268.
Okay. Yeah, and you're in that issue that you're opening, or did you open an issue? I couldn't see.
I'm
yeah.
typing it now.
Yeah, you should probably just mention we need to fill in not just the binding resource, but the app GUID. Once you figure out what to send for those things. I mean, we technically don't need to have a bind resource property per se, because the only thing in there is app GUID. So I'm not sure it makes a whole lot of sense to store that as a separate struct or as a nested struct. All we really need is app GUID.
Then maybe the answer is we don't need this, and your app GUID thing covers it.
Well, yes, no,
I don't think that's necessarily true. Sorry. So the only thing I'm thinking about is there might be some information that the platform needs for punching firewalls or something like that. If you're binding from I have a hazy recollection that I thought that that's what it would be used for, and I would like to go ahead and keep it at least until I get a chance to think about it.
Yeah. So that's what I was.
To be clear, Vile, I'm not suggesting that we drop it from what we send in the message. I think we have to send it in the message itself. What I'm talking about is, because we don't have any additional data in there, we don't necessarily have to have an entire struct for it. At least not at this point in time, right?
If you're confident, I will take your word, but I seem to recall thinking that would be a handy field to do something, but maybe I'm confused.
If someone can point us to a broker that you need to send some extra stuff there, that might be handy to have. Issues are cheap. I'm going to just create it, and we can sort it out later, whether we need it.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say, Paul, that I think there are two separate issues. One is just adding app GUID to the field itself, irrespective of what value we stick in there. So because earlier you were saying you may not need the issue at all because of the one I previously opened, but I think that they're two separate issues. Mine is just what is the value. You need an issue, or we still need the issue you're opening now, which is stick something in the resource itself. Because when someone does a get on the binding resource, they should see what we think is the app GUID, whatever that may be. Now,
let's see here. I actually don't see, and this might just be a gap in the spec that we need to close. There is the app GUID field, but
We just deprecated.
which is deprecated in favor of bind resource.appguid, which is a JSON object. So we could certainly use some specificity there. I'll go ahead and make an issue to send it. Okay. I will take a takeaway from this to request clarification on whether this is actually required. Because
So Paul, it's not required because not all bindings are necessarily tied to an application. They could be sort of global things like a load balancer kind of thing
okay.
for the platform. So that's why that's why app GUID is not a required field. But if we had a value, I think it's a good practice on our side to send it.
Okay, I think it could still use a little bit of clarification because the knowledge that you just articulated, Doug, is not present in the spec at all.
Totally, yep, totally agree. Yep.
Okay, so let's see. I guess there's also, we might want to support secret parameters on bindings too. I'm seeing head nods in the room.
I got to drop off, so I will leave it in your capable hands for now.
Okay.
Are we going to have another call tomorrow maybe, or Thursday? Or
Yeah, I'll schedule one for tomorrow. You guys might have to have Thursday. Well, you'll probably definitely have to have Thursday without me. And you might have to have Friday without me too. But
I'm traveling on Friday.
I will talk to folks offline about that.
Sounds good. Sorry, gotta go.
All right, see ya.
Bye.
Okay. I think we have some polls in progress to clarify the idempotent aspects of bind and provision.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's covered in the end of the page as a separate section. I mean, orphans are mentioned there, and I think it's very relevant to the idempotency.
Yeah. So before we get to that, specifically with like mechanics of unbinding, do we have any concerns here? I think we already send service ID and plan ID. I'm not hearing anything.
Seems straightforward.
I also think deprovisioning is also pretty straightforward, and VLA's work to support async correctly has done a lot to increase the quality of our implementation there.
Do we block the provisioning until all the bindings are deleted?
No, that is, I think that we have an issue to sort that out. Okay, so I know that we have discussed this a lot. I guess we don't have an issue. I'm actually surprised we don't have an
I
issue.
thought we had an issue for this.
I'll create a new one now, and just I'll make a placeholder, and I'll fill it in later if we can't.
I could have sworn we agreed that we were going to reject that request.
I don't disagree with you, but I don't see an issue for it, and we definitely don't actually do that yet.
Okay.
So I'll go and track this down as a follow-up. Okay, orphans. So I'm going to give this a close reading here for a second. I suggest all of you do the same. Okay, so this is what null is that acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay, this is what Null was talking about. That I think we could use a little clarification here, maybe an example. But it sounds to me like if you do a provision and you get and it times out, you should, in the case of a provision, it sounds like you should continue it. I'm not sure if this makes a lot of sense to me, actually. I would expect if you have a provision that times out, you should retry it.
Yeah.
They're saying you should just try and delete it and clean it up.
No, I think provision you can do over and over until it works, or you get an error saying don't try again. Bind is the one you have to delete, I think.
That's not what they say here, though.
Yeah, agree. I think that is a gap in the spec that we need to close. That it should say you should try to provision something until you get a 200.
Yeah, we can clarify that.
And you should try to deprovision something until you get a deleted.
Yeah, I agree. Also, like with Kubernetes reconciliation loop, it feels like this is the right way to handle things, to try to make it happen, not to just give up once you timed out.
Yeah, because when you start talking about money being involved in creating these things, asking us to delete something we may not be able to delete and then provision a new one could be very expensive. Yeah.
Like you might incur a chargeback just because you created one, right?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, so I think it sounds to me like we should do two things. We should try to clarify this in the spec, and then we probably need to have an issue just for handling these orphan scenarios that are the results of timeouts, right? So I made a placeholder one for orphans due to you've got active bindings and you deprovision. I'll make a new one for orphans due to timeouts. And since we're over, I'm going to just drop a link to the orphans section in this, and I will write the body offline.
I think it actually not only applicable to the timeouts, it's also applicable when the marketplace, for example, goes down and you need to restart it while some operation was in progress.
Yeah.
So you need to try to make sure that the binding which was in progress has completed or something like that. And since there are no GET requests, right, you can't even check if it was completed without you trying.
Yeah.
There is a last operation, but I'm not sure about if it covers all the cases.
Does that look good to you? What I wrote? Okay, well, I'm gonna call it here since we're about 20 minutes over. I will go back and fill in the body of issues that I created that still need to be filled in. I think I have a takeaway here to ask for clarification on things in the spec. And Doug, you've got some, and I think Vilay's got a couple takeaways that he had as well.
Yeah, I'll let you know which ones I open, or which ones I'm going to do later when I get back home. But yeah, I have like 4 or 5 from the spec, so we don't want to make sure we don't do duplicates.
Okay, so we got, let's see, we got 12 issues out of this. It could be worse. All right, well, thanks for joining everybody, and I'll talk to you shortly. I'll discuss times to meet tomorrow to talk through some of the stuff that we had discussed on Monday's SIG call in the Slack channel. All right, thanks for joining Nilebox.
Thanks.
All right, see you everybody.